The Old Covenant was done away with. And many people point to 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 7 to try and prove that the Ten Commandments were abolished along with the Old Covenant. However, if we study the context, what we find is that this chapter is not discussing the Ten Commandments. It's discussing the Old versus the New Covenants. How do we know this? Paul talks about the New Testament that gives life, and the Old Testament that does not give life. He calls it the ministration of death. Testament is his word he's using here for covenant. Here he calls it the ministration of condemnation, and then he contrasts it with the ministry of righteousness. So right away here Paul is describing the Old and New Covenants as an experiential thing rather than a historical thing. And here he basically tells us the same thing in Hebrews 8. The Old Covenant failed. Why? For finding fault with them, with Israel. God's covenant was not at fault. There was absolutely nothing wrong with his covenant. Israel was the problem. Why? Because 3 times in the book of Exodus, they said, all that the Lord has said, we will do, and be obedient. We will do it. We will be obedient in our own strength. We. They promised obedience in their own strength. They did not promise to keep their eyes focused on Jesus and to obey him that way. And so it got to a point, God gave Daniel a prophecy in Daniel chapter 9. He says, look, if you guys don't get your acts together, then at the end of 490 years, you guys will no longer be the chosen people. And that's exactly what happened. They rejected Jesus, they crucified him, they stoned Stephen. The gospel went from Israel to the Gentiles. And when Jesus died on the cross and rose again, the new covenant was ratified with his blood and put into effect, historically speaking. And God says the new covenant is all about writing his law on our hearts. And many people will point to Matthew 22. Jesus said, love God and your neighbor. That's all we have to do. But if you study where those laws came from, where Jesus was quoting from, he quoted from Leviticus 19 verse 18 and Deuteronomy 6 verse 5, both in direct context of the Ten Commandments. To love God and each other means to obey the Ten Commandments, according to Scripture itself. And that's what the new covenant is all about, is having his law written on our hearts so that we obey him out of love. The old covenant experience is trying to earn salvation by going your own way. And so by claiming the Sabbath was abolished, by trying to keep any other day as the Sabbath, you're placing yourself under the old covenant because you're going your own way, not God's way. The new covenant is salvation by grace, and everybody who has ever been saved, including Adam on to now, has been saved under the experience of the new covenant. And making excuses to disobey the Sabbath places you right back under the old covenant.